So now coming to one important concept which is called ecological succession. Succession is a universal process of directional change in vegetation on an ecological time scale. That is, the time scale is ecological, that it takes thousands of years. The process continues where one community replaces another community, and then finally or ultimately a stable mature community develops. The first plant to colonize an area is called pioneer community or a species. The species at the first stage is at the final stage, is called the climax community. So these two are important things we will discuss further. The stages which lead to climax community subsequently are called succession stage or series. So this term is also important. Now succession has some characteristics, and what are those? During succession, what happens? There is increase in productivity. So as we will move further, we'll have increase in productivity. Then the shift in nutrient from reservoir, that also happens. Then increased diversity. So basically what happens here, the shift in nutrients from reservoir. So previously the nutrient that will be stored in some reservoir, for example some rocks, so it will be freed from that rock, and soil formation will happen. So the nutrient which was before in rock, stored in rock, that will come out to the stratum, substratum or soil, and it can be consumed by further plants, etc. Okay, so that will be coming out of its reservoir. Then increased diversity of organism, which increase niche development, that also will happen. Initially you will have very few plants, and they will create environment which will be conducive for the development of further species, and ultimately various species will come, and niche will also develop as there will be competition. So they will do resource partitioning to develop niches. Then gradual increase in complexity of the food web. So as we discussed earlier, that the linear food chain will become more complex if you have more diverse environment, and the biodiversity is more. So various food web will be created, and that will be very complex. So basically there are two types of successions. So we'll deal the first type first, and then we'll go for second. So that is called, the first one is called primary succession, or here you can see primary succession. So please don't read anything, just focus on this diagram. So initially what you have is, you have bare rocks, you just have a rock. So there might be some phosphate or nitrates which are embedded in this rock, but there is no nothing organic in it. So subsequently what will happen, some of the organisms which can survive on very little nutrients like lichens, they will develop. Water can come from rain over it, so it will lead to some sort of cracking, and some nutrient will come out, and that will be conducive for the development of small microscopic plants which are lichens. Then this will continue for a long period, thousands of years. Then gradually and very slowly what will happen, the substratum will be developed. As you can see here, there is no soil, but gradually some gravel will be coming, and ultimately you will be having this soil. Okay, so the soil will develop, a small annual plant and lichen will develop in that soil. Okay, because the soil will have nutrient in it, and you will get sunlight and you will get water, and that will gradually develop into grasses which are perennials. That is, throughout the year you will have those grasses. So basically what are these stages? These are called series, or the succession stages. Okay, then in between you will have grasses, shrubs and shade which are intolerant trees such as pines. So they will also develop as the environment will become conducive for them. So in the process what is happening, one more thing is happening, try to get to that. And what is happening is, the species which created the conducive atmosphere or situation for the further species, they will get extinct. Now there might be no lichens and there might be no small plants, but the place has been taken by these plants for the plant, and this has happened by competition. In competition, what happens, whenever the resource is same and two species will compete for the same resource, then one will get eliminated. So that is what is happening now. They are getting depleted and a new species is emerging in the process. So further down, when the climate community will come or the forest will develop, then what happen, all these stages will ultimately lead to this climax community, and they will dominate and they will continue for a long period of time. So basically this is happening. Now come and read this, whatever has been written. So pioneering species are generally microbes, lichens and mosses. Okay, they alter the habitat conditions by their growth and development over generation. And what is that alteration which they do? They create the substratum which is necessary for development of any plant. Any plant will develop in the soil, not on the rock. So they are responsible for the creation of substratum. Now the new conditions become conducive for the development of higher plants. Then the pioneers, through their death and decay, leave organic matter in which small animals can live. For example, bacteria and other small animals, they can survive over that, and that will also enrich the soil. So they also release organic acids which develop substratum and enrich it with nutrients. Okay, then subsequently diversity increases and new niche will develop. The pioneer species disappear as the habitat condition changes. So as the habitat condition will change, they will be not able to cope up with the new situation, and they will get extinct or they will disappear as the habitat condition changes, and invasion of new species will progress. So this is what is called primary succession, wherein we will start from bare rock and we will end at some sort of forest. Okay, now come to secondary succession. So suppose there was a forest and it takes millions of years or maybe thousands and hundreds of years, the primary succession. And then secondary succession, it takes lesser time. And what happens here is, in the main difference which you can see, I will try to make the main difference in the same way. Yeah, here you can see in the primary succession you don't have the developed substratum, you don't have soil, and that is why it is taking that much time. And here in the secondary succession, wherein there was some forest and it may catch some fire or something may happen due to which they may disappear. So in that case, what is happening, the substratum is already present out here. So that is why it will take very less time. So what is happening here, again focus on the diagram. Some incident happen and due to which they suppose for example fire, and they disappeared, the climax species they disappeared. So already the substratum is there. So now no lichens and mosses will come to develop the substratum. It will start from the plants and grasses only, and grass will develop, the perennial grass will come into picture, and then shrubs and pines will develop, and finally you will have the forest. So these are the various series of a secondary succession. So now read. It generally occurs when the climax community has been disturbed. Okay, it is the sequential development of biotic community after complete or partial destruction of existing community, which can happen by flood, by drought, or by fire. Okay, so it develops over well developed soil or substratum. That is why it is much faster and it can happen in much less time. Okay, first the grasses will come, then herbaceous plants will come, then the small animals like mice, rabbit, insects they will develop, and then you will have trees, and ultimately you will have forest wherein very good biodiversity will be there. So succession would occur faster in areas existing in the center of large continents. So this is one important fact which you might note. Okay, now we'll come to aquatic ecosystem. So in aquatics ecosystem, the first we should go through the terrestrial ecosystem, but not much is there to study, so I will deal with that later on. First I will deal with aquatic ecosystem because that is very much important. It is very much important. So it says aquatic ecosystem is defined based on salinity of water into three groups. What are those? Freshwater ecosystem, then brackish water ecosystem, and ultimately marine water ecosystem. And salt content for freshwater is less than 5 ppt, then salt content for brackish water is 5 to 35 ppt, and salt content is equal to or above 35 ppt for your marine ecosystem. And examples are for freshwater system lake, pond, pool, spring, rivers, etc. For brackish you have estuary, then salt marshes, mangrove, swamp, etc. Then for marine ecosystem you have all the oceans, then sea, then shallow seas, for example Dead Sea, then Aral Sea, then Caspian Sea. They are also examples. Okay, now come to aquatic organism, how they are classified. So they are classified on the basis of zones of occurrence where they occur and their ability to cross these zones, how mobile they are. Okay, so they can be neustone. And what a neustone? These are the organisms which lives on the interface of air and water. Okay, they are unattached, that is they can move here and there, they can fly, for example mosquitoes or some insect as you can see in the figure. So they live at interface of water and air and they are unattached. Then you have periphytons. What are periphytons? They are attached, they are attached to their habitat. Okay, and one example is sessile alga. As you might have seen, they are attached to the rocks, as you can also see in the figure. So these are periphytons. Then you have nectons. What are nectons? Nectons are the aquatic animal which can swim, for example fish or shark. So they are large and powerful. So they are large and powerful because they have to swim and they may encounter some current, water current. So they will have to face that water current. That is why they should have power and they are powerful. A mosquito, it will not be able to swim in the water because it will not be able to face the current. Okay, so that is why they have a body which is large and powerful. Then you have planktons. Or first come to benthos. What are benthos? The animal which lives at the bottom of a pond or a ocean. They are called benthic animal. For example starfish, but they come to top layer to consume planktons or to feed. Okay, only respiration happens at the bottom of the sea or of the pond, no photosynthesis happens. So that is why for food they might come to the top of the ocean or pond. Then you have planktons. Planktons can be of two types. One is phytoplanktons or the plant, and the other is zooplanktons. So zooplanktons are generally protozoans and phytoplanktons are generally alga. Then locomotion is limited to control distribution. The phytoplanktons, they don't have much locomotion. Why? Because if they will have much locomotion, they might get dispersed and that will be very harmful for other fishes who feed on them. So they are very much localized because of their controlled locomotion. This is one important point. Then factors limiting the productivity of aquatic habitats. So there are various factors and one important factor is the sunlight, that is photic zone. The, the level up to which the sunlight is penetrable inside the sea or any aquatic system is called photic zone, and most of the photosynthesis activity that is confined to this zone. Then you have aphotic zone, only respiration activities take place here, and this deep unlit region is also known as profoundal zone. So they are also called profoundal zones. So aphotic zone and profoundal zone are basically the same things. Okay, so try to remember these names. Then what you have another very important factor is dissolved oxygen. So how much oxygen is dissolved? So oxygen enters aquatic ecosystem through two ways. One is the air water interface and the other is by a process called photosynthesis. So that is done by phytoplanktons. Then dissolution depends on temperature. So the dissolution of oxygen, that is dependent on temperature. Then other factors of aquatic ecosystem productivity is transparency and temperature. So if you will have more transparent water, then the photic zone will be more and photosynthesis will take place for a longer area. Okay, and if the transparency is less, then the photic zone will be very much confined. Similarly, the temperature, on temperature the dissolved oxygen will depend, so it will be also a factor. Now we'll see a new thing, which is lake ecology. And in lake ecology, first we'll deal aging of lake. So what is aging of lake? So as human being or any organism, they age, the lake also age. Okay, and generally the natural aging of lake happens in thousands of years, but due to anthropogenic changes, and this is happening much faster, and that is happening by a process called eutrophication. So what is eutrophication? First we'll also note that. So eutrophication, it is enrichment of an aquatic system by addition of nutrients. It is primarily caused by leaching of phosphate and nitrate containing fertilizers from agricultural land into the lake or rivers. So here try to concentrate on this figure. So what is basically eutrophication? When the content of nutrients will be very much in a particular aquatic system, that is called eutrophication, and that is very much harmful. And why it is harmful, we'll see. So first try to understand natural eutrophication. So there was a lake, okay, and what happened, there will be some animal in it, so it will get deposited to the bottom. Their detritus, when they will die, that will get deposited to the bottom. Okay, and gradually what will happen, and this is called oligotrophy or oligotrophic lake. So what is oligotrophic lake? So this lake is characterized by a low accumulation of dissolved nutrient. The nutrient salt are very less, which supports sparse growth of alga, okay, or algae and other organism, and having a high oxygen content. So oxygen content is more in the oligotrophic lake, okay, which is a very young lake, owing to low organic content. Now what will happen, it will be in mesotrophic phase, in which the nutrient content will increase and the oxygen content that will decrease as compared to the oligotrophic lake. And ultimately what will happen, in hundreds and thousands of years this will happen. The first transition will happen in thousands of years and the second transition will happen in hundreds of years. Okay, then you will come to something eutrophic lake, and that is characterized by very high accumulation of dissolved nutrients and high growth of alga bloom. So what will happen, high growth of alga will lead to very low sunlight penetrating inside the pond, and due to which what will happen, a lot of aquatic animals, they might die, and they will also be devoid of oxygen, because much of the oxygen will be taken by these alga or algae. Okay, so now their detritus layer will also increase, as you can see here, it will increase. So the decomposition of detritus is done by bacteria. Okay, and in the process of their decomposition, these bacteria, they also consume oxygen. So whatever oxygen was present will be taken up by these bacteria for the decomposition and by these algae. So more aquatic animal will die because no oxygen will be present for them. So the sunlight and oxygen content for other organisms decrease, so they will die. The decay of their detritus by bacteria further devoid lakes of oxygen. So this is called this is the process, okay, and this is natural process. This should happen by itself, and if it will happen by itself, it will take thousands of years, but it is not happening by itself. There can be two type of eutrophication, that is natural and anthropogenic. So it will take thousands of years if it is natural, but if it is anthropogenic, it will take just few decades, okay. So why it happens? Because of urban runoff, then industrial discharges, then fertilizers and pesticides, and erosion and sedimentation. Then non-point sources of pollution are also responsible for it, and this is your man-made eutrophication, okay. So the anaerobic condition thus formed due to eutrophication can promote the growth of bacteria such as Clostridium. So we also discussed this bacteria before. So Clostridium, their population will increase, and they are basically toxic, which produces toxins or poisons, okay, deadly to aquatic animal, birds and mammal. And these toxins can directly kill a bird, an aquatic animal or mammal, or they can enter for example a fish or a bird. So when they enter a fish or bird, they can enter further food chain, in the food chain, and this will lead to biomagnification, okay. So which can ultimately affect a lot of other organisms. So this is one harmful effect. Then what are other effects? It changes the ecosystem. The very ecosystem of lake is changed by this process. Then it decreases biodiversity and creates toxicity. So these are the effects. Then how can we mitigate it? By creating riparian buffer. What are riparian buffer? So riparian buffer is nothing but planting trees whenever you have some pond. So you should try to plant trees along its border, so that the runoff will less runoff will reach, okay. And check the agriculture feed runoff, which contains fertilizer. So now again we are going to discuss a very important topic, and a question might come from this topic because two topics are very important: mangrove ecosystem and coral reefs. So these two we'll discuss first, and then we'll also discuss one more important topic, which is wetland, okay. But first, as they are important, we will discuss them, and then we will be discussing the wetland topography and everything about that, the Ramsar convention, etc, okay.